stickers are awesome.
Yeah, those little sticker sheets are sick.
Do you print these out at
Those
at
are
your work, or where'd you get these done
no,
at?
those are Sticker Mule.
Oh, Sticker Mule. I heard of those guys.
Yeah, it's
They're
legit.
pretty affordable.
Yeah, they have deals all the time too.
It's like matte.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And that one's your dog, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. All right, yeah, and we can actually just get right into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast, the Code Paints podcast. Speaking of painting, I have actually one of my early mentors. I have one of my early mentors here with me, Josh Pena. Thanks for coming, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Dude, we've been friends for a minute here.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, late teens for sure. You were.
Yeah, what year did you start doing the Envy stuff?
So I graduated in 2007, so it was probably just 2008.
Yeah.
Like right around that.
Yeah.
So for those of you guys to what I've been doing, I actually started my artistic journey having a clothing brand and doing graphic design, that sort of thing, delving into screen printing later on, doing events like Vans Warped Tour, such stuff like that. And then it led on to doing actual like paintings and artistic stuff later on down the road. But back when I lived in Corona, that was my hometown, and Josh was over in Norco, just the next town over. Right when I was starting to get into doing shirts, I had heard about this shop called Nefarious, NFC. I had this kid named Josh. My cousin actually knew Josh and was like, hey, you should go talk to him. He's like our age. He'd, totally vibe with him and, learn how to do shirts and stuff. So went into your first shop. I think Chris was actually the first person that I ran into in the shop.
The 2nd Street Norco shop?
It was the one by, what's the one by Stater Brothers?
Yeah, that one. The
Yeah.
one that had the big wrap on the outside
Yeah.
with Mitch on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. R.I.P.
All the graffiti up on the walls, which is still there.
Yeah.
They said they were going to tear that place down. It's still there.
Really?
Everything's still
Oh
there.
my gosh, dude. And that was right down the street from your mom's too, right?
Yeah. I mean, shoot. You can bike ride, a little quick bike ride.
What
Half mile.
was that your first store?
That was our first shop, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
dude.
huge, but yeah, we went big.
How old were you when you opened that?
I was 1 year out of high school. I graduated high school when I was 18, so 19.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, man, so there's so much I want to talk about. Also, by the way, Josh gifted me this awesome 233 shirt, and then he gave me a sticker pack, little care package, and we got some of his stuff right here. Make rad shit. Koozie. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So Josh has been making his own stuff for quite a while now. He is just one of those really great people to know within the industry. He's kind of done it all. And we'll start at the beginning with screen printing and everything like that, which also goes into another point that I wanted to bring up. Did you learn in high school?
Yeah, kind of. So what happened was I had a family friend who owned a skate shop. And at one point, they started screen printing around like one color shirts. And I was like, I want to learn how to do that. That looks so easy. And so the dude was like getting overdoing his own stuff, and he was just shipping out stuff to other companies to print for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you know what? Take it. It was just like a one station, like 3 color, I think.
There you go.
And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, just take it, run with it. And so Chris and I ended up convincing my mom to get us like a flash dryer and a decent like Ranar conveyor.
Right.
And we just set up shop in the garage, and we just started cranking some stuff out, and it's all history from there. We started doing band shirts and, going to shows, and we're like, hey, we'll print your merch. And before you know it, we're in with the showcase, and we're doing bigger shows and sponsoring bigger bands. And
that's kind of the cool thing about you is you have such a rich history, especially within like that niche of bands and showcase and stuff like that. And
cool.
I think it's a really cool story to kind of tell on this podcast because
Sure.
you are linked to a bunch of different things that were big at the time and still grew and became bigger later on.
Yeah. It's really weird. It all happened super organically. Like,
Yeah.
we were just some kids that were just into the scene, into art, into tattoos, and the scene just kind of like brought us in, and we just went with it. That's
Yeah.
really all that happened, and we just kept working.
So because I'm gonna try and stay in chronological order here. So, you guys went from the garage. Eventually, what were you like selling shirts to like all the friends and everything? Like, how did you get to that first shop? Because something I keep preaching and I want to do with this podcast, because I know there are going to be younger artists that and younger entrepreneurs that listen to this. I want to let people know like it's really possible to do it at a young age, and even if you're at an older age, like
Yeah.
it might be a little older because you have more responsibility. But yeah, let's dive into that story.
We started from the garage, like I said, just whipping out just simple stuff. And then eventually we're like, all right, well, we need better equipment because we're doing a lot more now.
Yeah,
And so we got some better equipment, like a 4-color press. That's really all we got new. And we got a 4-color 4-station, which you can crank out way more stuff on than a single station.
yeah,
And we started doing stuff for not only like the bands, but then we eventually were doing stuff for our actual high school. And then also doing stuff for churches, some of the bigger churches in the area.
there you go.
And so we were getting these accounts and doing all this printing. And then alongside it, we had our brand, which also did well every time we had a show or whatever we did. And so that was just growing and growing. And we were eventually like, hey, like we could have a retail spot. We could have a bigger screen printing like operation.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah,
What do we got to look into to do this? So looked into loans and whatnot. And luckily I had really, really good credit when I was young, because my mom just was like, from a young age, she was like, you need to start working on your credit. And I'm like,
wow.
What's credit?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, you need to work on, you need to do this. I'm like, I'll do whatever you want. Sure. And so
As long as it's gonna help get me
and
there.
then she was my business partner. So
Go Mom.
her and I, we were just like, all right, let's go for it. So we went for it. And like when I was like graduating high school, we were already planning the new facility and where it's going to be and what it can be. And luckily at the time we had connections with a lot of, construction contractors and stuff. So we just tried figuring out any possible way to get everything we wanted done within our budget. And we just made it work. And it worked for a while. We literally got kicked out of that first spot because they said they were going to tear it down and build a Walmart or who knows what. But like I said, still there.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you're a 18, 17, 18-year-old when all this was going down. And I know like most 17, 18-year-olds want to go around and mess around, do other stuff, or they're getting into college and all that. And you went a different route. Was there anything that was said like with your mom being your business partner, or like how did you kind of stay focused and have that mindset? Because I know you were hungry from the get-go, but
I guess it's that entrepreneurial spirit that some people have and that drive to get like as an artist to get like your stuff out there and get it seen. I wasn't like super focused on just like dollars and cents. I was more focused on like, let's get our stuff on the coolest people and let's hang out with the coolest people. Like I'm 17, 18, 19 years old.
Yep.
I want to hang out with cool people, do cool stuff. Why not like make shit that they're stoked on?
Yeah.
And present it that way instead of being like, hey, I think you're cool. Let's hang out. Like it's like, hey, like let me help you. You help me. Let's work
You're
together.
adding value to them.
Yeah, yeah. And at the same time, like we were fun people to hang out with. Like when we were younger. I mean, I have a good little clique of dudes that we like to party, we like to hang out, we like to have a good time, but we're also like really artistic.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the also major things that I love, just being around the shop. Like, every time I would come in, saying like totally also what you just said about having it be about the art and not the dollar and cents, but you were good with money management and all that stuff. Was I'd walk in and there would be, every type of music playing, honestly. Like you had rap, hip hop, hardcore, screamo, everything. That was just blasting. You were doing your t-shirts or you were doing graphic design.
Yeah.
And you were always, this is the thing that I love about you, man. You were never secretive with me about anything. If I ever had a question, you would give me enough to have me go out and figure it out on my own. But like in that big brother type of way. And I've always appreciated that.
Oh yeah, no worries, dude. I saw you as a little bit younger version of me. So I was like, this he's into it, and he's really into it. Because there's plenty of people who will come up and, that ask questions or want to know how to do something. And you let them know like a thing here or there, and it doesn't go nowhere.
Yeah.
You had that drive. I could see it. You're like, no, I want to do this. And like, you kept coming back. So I'm like, yeah, this kid's for real.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks, man. And so we're going to dive in all this stuff because some of this early stuff that I'm about to talk about will come into play later on in this podcast. But you had graffiti all throughout the shop. When did you start messing around with spray cans and tagging and all that stuff?
Whew. Well, that first shop, we did some stuff in the garage, just messing around, like just drunk teenage kids that we got in trouble for. But once I got to the first shop, I was hanging around the tattoo shop a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, the Us Versus Them shop was right next door.
That's right.
So, and actually right just before that, they were like down the street, and then they eventually moved next door. And we had the Nefarious stuff in their store for a little bit. And I just loved that place. Like every time I walked in there, I'm like, there's dudes on skateboard ramps. There's really good graffiti everywhere, like Seventh Letter stuff. And, like Rhyme had all his little throwies on the wall in there. I'm like, this is sick. And one of the dudes who painted my shop, Mike Glory, he was always in there. And Chris and I would stop in and whatnot. And he was a really good writer too. He still is. And then Milt, who worked at the tattoo shop, both those guys ended up painting my first shop, and I would just sat there and watched them the whole time. I'm like, this is so cool.
There you go.
And then that was it. After that point, I'm like, I'm going to Home Depot. I'm grabbing cans. I'm working on my own stuff in the print shop, and I just started doing it, and it just came so natural.
That's.
I mean, it's layers. So
Yeah.
when you're in Photoshop and Illustrator, if you have an artistic background, grab a spray can, work your layers. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So much
And
fun.
you did. And I don't know, man, like it almost felt like seeing you do that, you did have a different style right from the get-go, because I think from my perspective, you were influenced by a lot of the hardcore screamo like designs that was going on at that time, and so that almost got reflected in the graffiti that you were doing. There were a lot of like cracks and crisp, sharp lines and stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure that had an influence. I mean, it has an influence on everything I do still today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still into all that same music. Like it's kind of crazy. Like if you go through my phone and you look at the music, it's like, dude, this is the same shit you listened to in high school. It's crazy. But I mean, some new things trickle in here and there. Good thing I got good like friends with good ears that are like, hey, you gotta check these guys out. Like Chris or Panda will be like, check this out. I'm like, whoa, this is new. This is what I'm talking about.
And that's another like kind of cool transplant thing that is within this whole story, is people that are connected through the Nefarious and the beginning journey is Chris Panda. He is another. I'd love to have him on the show because he's had such a unique life and a unique path that like a lot of people don't know is even like possible.
Yeah, it's been really crazy. Like it actually really all started out at the shop too, the first shop. Like I remember Panda coming into my office and I'm working on who knows what. I think I was working on a design for like a gazebo company or something.
Really?
Yeah, and he's like, dude, I think I'm going to go on tour. I'm like, with who? And he's like, Emir's singer is sick and they want me to go on tour because we sponsored Emir.
Right.
And I'm like, cool. And he's like, I got to learn all the songs right now because I'm leaving in like 2 days. I'm like, all right. So he's sitting in my office. I'm working on a design for a customer. And he is literally screaming and singing and memorizing and doing his whole thing right here next to me because my office was tiny. And I was like, he's like, oh, how does it sound? I'm like, dude, it sounds great. You're going to do great.
Yeah.
And he ended up going from there to then doing vocals, like just fill-in vocals for All Shall Perish and went to Australia and went on tour with Bleeding Through in Australia with All Shall Perish. Like, and then just from one thing to the next. And
It's crazy, man. I do remember going to the shop one time, and I remember him rehearsing in the back, and I remember, like, because I was trying to talk to you about something, and I just hear him in the back. I'm like,
Dude, this thing, yeah.
dope. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. So, real quick, run through, if you're cool with talking about it, the little laundry list of bands and also some of the brands you've also worked with, just to give the people, like, an idea.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. Well, in the early days of Nefarious, one of the first bands that we ever sponsored, which still to this day is one of my favorite old bands, was Odd Project. They were one of the first ones. So Odd Project, and then eventually we got Underneath the Gun. We got Underneath the Gun first, I'd say, but one of the bigger first bands was Odd Project, and then shortly
Harrison,
shortly after Odd Project, when we had like our friends Birth and Burial with like Panda and Apple and
oh my gosh, yeah.
Nate was even in that band at one point.
Apple's
in
in
the
my
early
wedding,
stages.
actually. He's one of my groomsmen.
Right on.
Yeah, that's so
Love
cool.
him. We had the local guys, obviously Corona area. Just we were also all homies.
Yeah.
So, but like then we went like Odd Project, and then eventually we got Still Remains. Shortly after that, we had the other like local guys like Suicide and Oblige. Eventually we were pretty close with Impending Doom. I don't know if we ever like officially like sponsored them, like they were on the page. Maybe. I don't know. It was so long ago. MySpace.
Oh, good old MySpace, dude.
But and then we got Job for a Cowboy, which was huge. We started printing their merch. It was nuts. And then Suicide, when they started really blowing up, we were doing some of their merch, and that was crazy. And then eventually Whitechapel, Carnifex.
I'll throw up some of these pictures with your guys' merch on there.
Oh,
too,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I remember. So one thing I remember
Immure,
vividly.
obviously.
What was that?
Immure, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I already talked about that with Panda, but yeah.
One thing that I remember vividly on your MySpace page, because I did come to you and ask this question, you were talking to me about blending. You had your banner, which had the Nefarious like tag, and then it had. Do you remember that trend with photos where it was like with the flash and it almost looked like it wasn't blurry, but it was like. I guess it did kind of have a motion blur to it, but it was all concert shots.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but you were layering and blending all those just with the blending brush.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time I had ever seen that, young Photoshop days. And I was
Like, whoa.
that was awesome. Sorry, go ahead. So, okay, so.
So, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, there eventually was just like way too many, but at the end of the day, they were just ended up all being good friends of us, and it was so cool. I mean, Born of Osiris, there was a lot. And then eventually Travis started doing music, which goes back to Panda, where his, path eventually went. Travis started doing music. He was just a friend. We were doing his merch, and then Panda went from being my right-hand man to being Travis's right-hand man, and then Travis actually carried his music career on. As that all started, the print shop and the actual line of ours started to go away because we just all started to grow up kind of in a way. But it was super fun while it lasted, and we met so many people along the way, like you said, not just bands, but artists and all the people that we still really hang out with today are just people they came from that past, and different brands, and being able to go like to Warped Tours and do all that kind of stuff. That all happened during that time, and so much knowledge was gained and such great times. It was sick.
Because, dude, you were just grinding day in and day out. And I kind of remember around that time that transition was happening, because that's kind of when I started doing my own screen printing stuff, and you sold me a bunch of screens and stuff like that, which is kind of funny because I'm in that transition of getting rid of some of my stuff. So I remember you were like, hey, like $5 per screen, but you got to clean it. Like, so I'm kind of at that point, I'm like, all right, I'm passing on that tradition. Like, I'm not doing this. You do it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I remember, and this is bleeding into the next chapter, is you were doing your graphic design just kept leveling up. And I think at the time you were getting paid some good money to do stuff for like Fatal, right?
Yeah. So that's when I stopped doing my own brand and my own printing. It really all happened because the people who I had helping me out, outgrew me and went their own ways, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing this solo.
Because there's only,
And when
Yeah.
you're at that point, I got to a crossroads where I was like, all right, well, my design skills are pretty good, so I could keep riding when I'm this wave that I'm riding, but I'm solo, and it's going to be a little different because I'm going to have to either seek out help of people who I'm not comfortable with, or I can just put it all on me, and I have no problem getting rid of this equipment and kind of pulling back and just focusing on my design career. I had the long talk with my mom because she was my business partner for the longest time, and she's like, you know what? She's like, I think you should do it. I think you should do it. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. We had a good ride.
right.
It's no worries. It's your future. Do it. And so I started working with Mark over at Fatal. And that was cool. That was a great experience. And I've always been doing my stuff on the side.
Right.
Like, because of all the people that I've, had all these different friendships with and been business acquaintances with, like, people are always constantly hitting me up like, hey, I got a new logo. I got a new business I'm starting.
Yep.
And it never ends.
Yes.
So along with working with Mark and doing that, I was always doing my own thing, and which just made me better at my craft. So that's where it started. And then I just took it from there.
Which is something
Design life.
Yeah, the design life, dude. It never ends. One thing I'm gonna throw it in throughout the episode, and but for all of you guys that want to follow Josh, which you definitely should because his graphics are insane. His merch is awesome. It feels great. It's gallery _233, right?
Yeah, on Instagram.
And the name came from That's your.
Yeah, the name came from my favorite number, which is I've been riding motorcycles, dirt bikes, since I was like 10 years old, maybe even earlier, and also playing football. And so, being just the way that I am, I'm kind of like I don't know. I get fixated on certain things. Like, it's not like an OCD, but I guess it kind of is. And one of the things early on, I got obsessed with my football number when I was like 8 years old.
Nice.
Which was 33. And then when I started riding motorcycles, obviously my dirt bike had 33 on it. But then one year when I was a little older, like close to high school, my football number got changed because the 33 didn't fit me. The jersey, it was too big or too small or something. And they gave me number 2, and I'm like, all right, whatever. It's cool. 2's cool. And so then I was like, well, now I'm number's 2. And I was like, you know what? Ain't no one got 233. So I slapped that on my dirt bike. And when I was like 10, 11 years old, or who knows how old, and I've just been obsessed with it ever since. It's just been something that's been consistent in my life. Like, since I've been creative, has been that. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start calling everything 233. That's my label. My alter ego is a number.
I think that's freaking badass, dude. That's so cool. And I think there are so many good points that have been brought up in this discussion, but I think something that we kind of talked about previous, when I met you, your tag name was Cap'n, and you were doing a lot of like tags with that name, and that was great. But as artists, I think we're always kind of constantly reinventing ourselves or changing our style, working on something new, evolving essentially. And I think that's okay. It's okay to let yourself do that, especially if you feel like it's necessary and it's time.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, I when I was young, wild, and free, I would write Cap, and I would spray paint that on some stuff, but I never got really crazy with graffiti as far as like being out in the streets. Some freeways here and there, maybe some like local yards that you shouldn't be painting at, but everyone does anyway. Some like a few little train yards. Nothing crazy though. I wasn't ever really into like blasting my name up on like someone else's property, more so just like city property or stuff like that. And that's what I associate that Cap'n with, was that time period when I was just a punk kid, just the homies would drink a 40 and be like, let's go paint something. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm an old fart now, dad, married, and I'm like, we're not writing Capit no more, dude.
There you go, man. Can't be tied to anything else. But you're doing great, man. And
Appreciate
like
it.
the new stuff that you got going on. Which thank you again for the merch.
Of course.
This is so sick.
Of course.
We're still gonna kind of keep going into this story, but that's why I wanted to like just do the plug and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
awesome.
for sure.
So. Going back, I know. So we were talking about the Fatal days, and then from there, did it go into Answer, or were you independent for a while after that?
No, I went right into Answer. So Fatal had my stint there. Mark, who is my friend, and who brought me into Fatal, eventually went his separate ways and started a very successful business called Rusty Butcher.
Yeah.
And so since he parted his way, I mean, he was the reason I was working there.
Shout
He
out
was
Mark.
the homie. Yeah, shout out Mark, Rusty Butcher, Butcherland Ranch. He was the reason I started working there. I wanted to help the homie out. He had the means to bring me in.
Right.
So once he left, I was like, this is weird. So I just started looking, and Answer kind of just fell into my lap. I've always been a motocross kid and super into motocross and football my whole freaking life, besides art. But those are my sports.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things about you too, because if you were to think about it, I mean, if you were to take you at face value, you know, the tattoos and your style and everything like that, you wouldn't think motocross really like that.
Yeah,
you
maybe
know,
not. Yeah.
riding bikes, but I mean, obviously, because that's like I know you as that, but
Sure.
it's kind of cool because, like I said, I feel like a lot of that encompasses into your style and how you do things, and I like how that kind of bled into your working with Answer, and now all the stuff that you're doing now.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that, like your
Sure.
the design process and stuff you did for that, and
As far as
things
for
went?
Answer,
Or yeah, did you feel okay? Well, here
going from Fatal to Answer was a trip. Design.
That's what I was gonna say too. Because what were the challenges going from something that was definitely your groove, your ride, and now to something I don't want to say a little bit more corporate, but
It was 100%.
Okay.
It was. It was weird at first. So what happened was, I originally got hired on to be the designer for Pro Taper, which is a handlebar company, which is really outside of like making rad graphics for shirts. I mean, that's making like that's doing packaging, doing catalogs, doing, web banners and stuff, like social media posts and pushes and all that stuff, ad campaigns. So that was way different. Like I was just like, whoa, okay. But at the same time, we were working in the same building as Answer, and I would have like Answer projects going on too. They'd be like, hey, can you do this for us? Can you do that for us? And it came to a point where they're like, hey, you want to just do Answer? I'm like, yes, because like, no offense to Pro Taper, love them, still very, very close with them. But
That's
Answer was more fun. It was it was gear, it was helmets, gloves, pants, jerseys, like back to like lots of graphic stuff, which I was like sick. And plus, like as a kid, when you're growing up, like in the motocross scene, like the dude who looks the sickest, you're like, that's what I want to look like. You know what I mean? So that was very different, but also I was just like, I had that background as a kid, just watching these guys on TV and being like, I want to look like that when I ride my motorcycle, even though it never is going to happen. But I can at least put the gear on.
Well, dude, I'm sure you had probably a couple championship jerseys that you designed.
Oh,
no?
yeah, totally.
So who? I mean, I'm gonna look it up and post them on here. But like who?
Yeah, well, we
were some of the
did.
top-
So what we would always do at Answer, which was super cool, and I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be designing for it. But like, we had riders, and so our riders, we had overseas riders, we had riders here domestically, and if they won, we would basically take one of the jerseys or whatever that we already had designed, which I would have designed, or one of the other designers would have designed, and then we would do it up as like a championship, like one-off. And then when they won, which we had to make it beforehand, hoping they win.
Yeah.
And then if they win, then that would be the one that they would be showing like in the magazine or whatever the next week or so. And so that was always super cool. Always super cool to see that. Always super cool to meet these professional riders that you watched on TV and you're like, well, here I am hanging out with one of the most famous riders in the world. This is crazy, but it's also just my job. So yeah, it was awesome. That was super cool. But definitely going back to the difference between just regular graphic design for shirts versus graphic design for all these other things, it was intimidating, but I just kind of like stuck to my gut and I was like, well, I'm going to show them some wild stuff because I come from a more wild background and hopefully it sticks. If not, I know I can do some simple stuff. So I kind of shot the wild, shot them the simple. They liked everything or they didn't, or we found like the happy medium.
Yeah.
And then just going from there, what works, what doesn't work, just finding that formula, and that's
totally. That's important. You gotta shoot your shot with that type of stuff, and that's kind of like the same thing I do with Scott. It's like when I came in there, I pretty much built my position. I mean, there really wasn't somebody in there, and that's why they wanted somebody to fill that role, and so there really weren't any steps to take as far as branding goes. Like I created the logo, I created the color palette, the look, and so same thing. I kind of was moderate with some things at first, testing the waters with like how we were gelling, and then as soon as he saw me make kind of like a few cool, more out there things, I brought him like other wilder video ideas, stuff with like clips spliced in, comedy stuff, punched it up, and that's the same thing. You kind of gotta trust yourself and know what you can try and get it to do, and you never know what the return's going to be.
Of course. And then when you do those things, that's how you end up growing. That's how you when you throw in a little bit of something that might be a little out there, it might be a little out there, but it might also work. And the person that you're presenting it to might be like, that's kind of crazy, but I love it.
Right.
And then that's growth.
It just might work.
Yeah, this might work.
So you were doing these rad jerseys. I remember, I felt so stoked for you, dude, when I'd see your stuff in like, magazines, and I, go to Barnes and Noble and I go to the motocross section and be like, oh, my friend did that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's a trip.
Yeah. So you did that for how many years did you work at Answer?
About another 5 years at Answer.
There you go.
Yeah, another 5 years at Answer, and yeah, it was a great ride. Had such a good team there. It was so cool. It was like a dream job for a dude who came up riding dirt bikes.
That's amazing.
That also enjoys creating stuff and making art. So big shout out to all my crew that worked with me over at Answer. It was
shout out to Answer.
It was a fun trip.
There you go. Like you said, companies they grow. They went to Texas, like you said, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we kind of, because due to the pandemic, they were forced to downsize, and we were out here in California. It's not cheap. It's not cheap to run businesses in California, and
it is not.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they decided to, because we were a part of the company, but essentially we were their design house. Mm-hmm. So. They were like, it's just unfortunately, due to good old coronavirus, we're not going to be able to keep doing business how we're doing. Sadly, so yeah, they're in Texas now. They're doing good. The last stuff that I designed just came out. It looks great.
Wow.
So it's
kind
cool
of weird
to
how
see
timelines work that way. Within the design industry.
Of course, yeah, everything's a couple years out. So, like, yeah, it's out now. It looks really, really good.
You were on to bigger and better things, or should I say smaller things, because you had your adorable baby boy.
Yeah, right at the same time I had my first child and only child as of now, Hendrix, and yeah, he's awesome.
Did he just turn
two? Turned 2. Yeah, he's the man.
That's
Love
awesome.
That little guy.
Like I said, man, I see pictures of, he just looks like a little rock star.
Yeah, he is. He's the rock star of the house, that's for sure.
So what is your okay? So I ask a lot of artists. I've only had like 2 other ones on here, but time management when it comes to doing. You have your full-time job.
Yep.
What? Where are you at right now?
I'm at Roland Sands Design right now. Well, I've been there for this is my second year there. It's an awesome custom motorcycle and apparel brand. Roland Sands Design on Instagram, rolandsands.com. Yeah, check it out. We're doing some really cool stuff over there.
Nice.
Just moved to a super rad, gigantic facility in Long
You were telling
Beach,
me about this.
and it's gonna be a big deal.
He's underselling. This place sounds freaking rad. Can you talk about it at all, or
I mean, a little bit. I mean, it's in Long Beach. We have a super rad retail store that is it's not totally ready yet. We're gonna have a grand opening, but we did do a soft opening, and you could come in and check it out.
Awesome.
When we do our grand opening, though, it's gonna be a sick party and a very cool place to see. If you're into motorcycles of any kind, it's the spot for sure.
Go.
It's the spot.
Dude, I love that. That's so great. And then, so getting back into the time management thing with family, because like you said, you're working at Roland Sands, you're doing your own brand, 233, and you got your lady and you got your kid.
Yeah.
So what does your time management look like when you get home?
Oh man. Well, as soon as I get home, I'm dad. Oh,
as you should be.
Yeah. Before that, because I pick up my son from daycare, and it's just home, family time. As soon as the kid goes down, I'm usually right back on my computer for the most part. I try to, if I know I'm being like too crazy about work, because I can get that way, I'll try to just tell myself, just stop, just for tonight. Watch the Bachelorette with your wife tonight. Mm-hmm. Screw it, dude. Like, it's all good.
Yeah.
Have a glass of wine and watch stupid Bachelorette.
Because
you got to do it. You got to do it.
Of course.
And then, but most of the time, it's like, I stick to a pretty crazy schedule. It's like work all day, come home, kid goes to bed around 8. So I start working. We try to put him down right before 8, like right around 8. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
On a routine.
Yeah, and then as soon as he's down, I'm on it. I'm just on my computer, which luckily my little office space is in our living room. So like, I'm technically hanging out with my wife. She's right behind me.
Right? Dude, that's exactly how mine is. It's like the couch and stuff is right here. Before I was in like a totally separate room. We had like a little office in the first place. Oh, no. Then it changed it was the same room in the other place. But so now this is our third place living together. Yeah. But yeah, so technically, but my back's to her for half the time.
I'm here, but I'm not. I've got my headphones in, you know, mm-hmm. I'm like kind of doing my own thing. She'll say something like, "What? I'm not talking to you." All right.
That happened to me the other night, dude. She's cooking. It's like I was talking to myself. I'm like, "Oh, my bad." But that's one thing that I'm trying to get a lot better at is I can't really stop the brain, but I can stop what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's American Horror Story for us.
It's rough, man. Yeah, so I try to work during the week and do my freelance or anything that I need to do for myself from like 8 to 11. I try to cut myself off at 11, but a lot of times it's 12, 1. Sure. If I'm in the groove, I'm just gonna go.
Right.
You know,
you have if you're in the pocket, you gotta stay there and do it.
Exactly.
That's the other thing I'm trying to do right now is. At least it's kind of like what it's been rolling out to be, especially with doing this channel, doing all my commissions and stuff like that. It's like Monday, I will schedule all my content that I've done or shot the week before. And then within that, I kind of try and paint a little bit of something every night. But then like Tuesday will be, I got to shoot a video either here at the studio or I got to do something at home. And then Wednesday, all day painting. Wednesday is our show night, so actually I don't get a lot of work done that one. But it's like I try and do something a little bit every day, but something that is, or every night, but that is productive towards the end goal.
Yeah, and if sometimes, I mean, there's been plenty of times where like I'll be like, all right, I'm not gonna do nothing today. I'm just gonna hang out. Like let's say I try not to work on the weekends, Saturday, Sunday, for the most part. Every once in a while I will, but I get really antsy, and so like I'll be like, I need to do something. Like I need to make something. I need to like either I need to get on my computer and work or like be creative, or I gotta go do something. Like last weekend, my kid had an ear infection. My wife had has something going on, like some sort of sinus infection or whatever. And I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, there's nothing to do. You guys are boring. So I went outside and I repainted like our address on the curb. I'm like, all
Please
right,
tell
what
me
else?
you like did it.
I did it, but I didn't because I didn't want to be like too far off from the neighbors'
Okay.
curbs. So like, I picked a better font than what they had.
Sure.
I made my own stencil. It looks way better than everyone else's.
There you go.
But and then after that, I'm like, well, I need something else to do now. So I'm like hanging up posters or paintings in my little garage man cave. Like I gotta do something. But trying to stay away from the computer because I know I have plenty of that to do. So it's tough doing what we do and being a creative. It your brain never stops. You're always wanting to make something. You see something, you're like, oh my god, I gotta take a picture of that. I have so many pictures on my phone that I took that I'm like, I'm gonna make something out of that. The screenshots are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many
folder's
screenshots.
massive.
Even on my desktop, it's just full of screenshots everywhere. I'm like, oh dude, come on.
It's like, just imagine what it's like up here.
Yeah.
So I have my progress board that's like over here of just ideas, and it's like on top of that, my writing is shit. So I mean, but it's organized chaos. I know where everything is and all my notes and stuff, but at the same time, Scott will come in, he'll look at that, he'll just be like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not organized for him, but it works for me. So
that looks like my desktop on my Mac.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
Just
man.
chaos, but I know where everything's at. Trust me.
Exactly.
People are like, what is this? Like, you clean up your desktop. I'm like, I did like 2 days ago. It's like this now.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. Like, especially when it's always interesting to see when we were at the older office and I'd have like Premiere up or Illustrator up and I was working on files or just, different things, and seeing people's, like, because it's so cluttered, that gives them anxiety. But for me, I'm just kind of grooving. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Because it looks so chaotic, but
it's not that bad.
No, not at all. Dude, so, real quick, another thing I wanted to ask you, because I think it's really cool and something a lot of people around the world don't have, Venice Beach.
Oh, yeah.
And you were going out there, and I remember one of the last things was the last thing you did, the 233
in Venice.
The Niners one?
Yeah, in Venice. That one was the last one. I used to go to Venice. That was because I wasn't, like, super into just going out on the streets every night doing graffiti, like, and painting. Venice was my spot. So, like, I would try to go. I feel like for a while there, we were going, like, every other weekend. We would go sit there all day, sneak in some beers in a backpack.
There you go.
And just paint all day.
You had a Halloween one. I don't know if
we did a full Halloween production,
cool.
Me and my buddy Matt. Yeah, that was so much fun. And so it's something that I need to do more of because it's just so relaxing, and it in a sense it's like a meditation for me getting out there, putting my headphones on and just painting Venice all day long. And I mean, it's Venice too, even though it's grimy and whatnot, that goes with it. Like,
right.
That's perfect.
Part of
it's part of the whole thing, the whole experience. So I need to get out there way more though.
What's that like? So if any other, younger artists want to go out and do that, do you just go out and paint? Or
now,
is there like a list? Or?
Now, that's how it is. It's first come, first serve. It used to not be like that. You used to have to show up early in the morning and wait for the dude that ran the walls to get there, because he would be stumbling in from doing whatever he did the night before.
Yeah.
And you'd have to show him what you want to do and tell him how big of a space you need. And he would dictate where you went, and he would give you a lanyard that said like Venice Walls on it or whatever. And that means you're good to go for as long as you need to finish your piece. Now, it's first come, first serve. You just show up to the walls down there in Venice, bring your paint as long as you need, find your spot. It's better if you go with someone else because then you can get a bigger spot. And you get your painting in and take as many pictures as you can, because I'm telling you, 15 minutes after you walk away, it's gone.
That is
someone's
wild.
Painting right over it.
I was gonna ask. I was like, how quick is that turnover?
Yeah.
But
so back in the day, they used to, if they liked it, they would keep it up. Nice. So like when we did the Halloween one, they kept it up for a while because we went like the week of Halloween.
Sure.
So I think Halloween managed to like fall on like a weekday, like middle of the week, and we went on a Sunday in the evening. So, or we were just there all day. It was a huge wall. And so they kept it up through Halloween because I had people out there who were like taking pictures still and sending it over. Yeah. Yeah, that was super cool. Venice, if you want to paint, if you want to do some graffiti on some walls in the public and have an audience, especially if you're decent, Venice. Super fun. We should go out there.
Yeah, I would love that, dude.
Yeah.
I would love that because, I mean, I'm still learning, man. It's like...
Never ends.
Yeah, it never ends.
You never
There's
stop
always new
learning.
stuff.
Yeah, never stop learning.
That'd be great. Well, yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Dude, of course.
Anything you got coming up you want to plug or?
I mean, not really. I'm gonna be putting out some new hats, and riding season's coming up fairly quick when it starts to cool down. So I'll put out some new custom jerseys on the merch store, which is you can find through my Instagram. It's also merch_233 on Instagram, but the website ccxxxii.com, which is 233 in Roman numerals.
Sure.
And you can catch all my merch there. And other than that, I just a dude just doing art and being a dad.
There you go. Dude, I'll put all the links, everything down below. Yeah, man, it was great talking to with you, hearing you tell your story and getting asked some of these fun questions.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll have to do it again because I know there's so much I'm gonna remember as soon as we leave.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I forgot about that.
Well, what we should do is we should go to Venice. We should plan out a time, go to Venice, paint, get a lot of footage, and talk about it.
I'm in.
All right.
Let's do it, dude.
All right, man.
I'm down. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching, tuning in. Keep doing it. If you like the podcast, like, subscribe, tell somebody about it. If you have a friend or know anybody that's super into art, an entrepreneur, wants to start their own business, I think this is going to be a great episode to watch. So, thanks Josh for coming over, man.
Of course.
Always much love. And thanks everybody. Stay weird, get creative. Wow, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if you dug this one, make sure you check out these ones right here. They won't disappoint.